righty, my friends. It is the Dr. Sam and the Start Spreading the News podcasts all in one this week. EJ and I are not available on Monday night, so we're going to do one show and rerun it a couple of times. But this is a show worth rerunning because we're not really going to talk a lot about baseball today. It's going to be something different. But before we start, let me just remind everyone to make today a great day. And how do you do that? You do that by finding kindness, finding the good around you, cherishing it in your heart, and spreading it forward. Remember, when we give love and kindness, it comes back to us in greater amounts than we ever gave. So we're not going to do baseball today. We're going to do something a little different. Bear with me a moment here. I got to get ready, because I might be going 15 rounds. I'm not quite sure. Got to get ready. Here we go. We today are going to be talking boxing with my friend, and I can't do any of the technical stuff with the gloves on, and my old podcast partner for years and years with Mac from the Mac and Jack show. Now he's on with Keith Engel. Here is the great Jack Hirsch. Jack, how are you?
Hey, great, Paul. And you mentioned the old days when we used to do the debate show. And you and I once had a debate. Which sport had a greater history, baseball or boxing? You took the side of baseball. I took the side of boxing. But as the years have gone by, I've shifted over to baseball. So that's a debate. It took you a while to win. Some court cases go a lot quicker than that one did. But ultimately, you called it right, I believe.
Oh, thank you, Jack. But you know what? Boxing, we've talked about this many times. Boxing was the great sport. Let's do it this way. What was the greatest single sporting event of the 20th century?
Oh, the first Muhammad Ali Joe Frazier fight. No, nothing came close to that. And I was at that fight as a teenager, sitting in the last row. And that is the most exciting moment of my life. And I don't know whether you know this or not, okay? Frazier, when he knocks Ali down in the 15th round, what went through my head is that was like a shot out of a cannon. Listen to this. 50 years to the day after that fight, 50 years to the day, I have a grandson born to me by the name of Cannon.
Oh, my God, that's great.
What are the chances of that happening?
One in a million.
50th anniversary kid. But baseball and boxing kind of mixed a little bit. Joe DiMaggio was an incredible fight fan. He'd go to all the big fights, Yankee Stadium, the Polo Grounds, and ballparks, especially in New York. Those two used to host a lot of big fights.
Oh, of course. And the thing is, boxing, and I think baseball, and I think all the sports are doing this. I've talked about this a lot. I think they're going to go the way of boxing. What happened with boxing, at least in my fandom, is they took the sport away from fans. You couldn't watch the fights. You never knew where they were. Is this an HBO fight? Is it a Showtime fight? Is it a pay-per-view fight? If it's a pay-per-view fight, it wouldn't get on till 1 o'clock in the morning. But you couldn't really follow fighters because you never knew where they were going to fight, when the fights were going to be. And over time, like, I can't tell you right now who any of the champions are. I might have heard of one or two of them, but I don't really know anything about any of them. And I probably haven't heard about 90% of them because there's just no way that I could follow it. I even subscribed to the Ring magazine for a couple of years, and it didn't really help. And baseball's doing that now. The Yankees are on like 9 different networks. Every Wednesday night they're on Prime or Amazon or something, so you can't watch a Wednesday night game. And the more they take the sport away, the more it becomes a sport that nobody's going to care about.
But be thankful that unlike boxing, baseball is much better organized. Case in point, the Yankees are 27-time world champions. If boxing was in charge of baseball and was run the same way, I don't know if this make you happy or not, the Yankees would be 48 times world champions because the Dodgers would have been stripped of their World Series title at some point in the last couple of years. We would have had the Yankees play the Philadelphia Phillies or something to see who would be the new baseball champion. I mean, that's what goes on in boxing all the time.
And true. Well, you'd have the world champions from the MLB, then you'd have the national champions from the MLWBC and the International Baseball Federation, the IBF would have a champion.
Beautiful. You're good. I mean, don't talk anymore. Someone might pick up on it. No. Listen, sometimes we're ahead of our times and not realizing. I said about 30 years before it happened to make a rule in picking the runoff at first base. The pitcher's allowed only a couple of throws. On the third one, the runner automatically gets second base. And they finally adapted that. I was decades ahead of that because it was monotonous the way the pitcher would throw to first base, as much as he wanted. But we got to keep up with the times. I'm an old timer, but I'm not an old timer in my thoughts. Even with the new rules in baseball and boxing, you mentioned 15 rounds. It's really 12 rounds, and it's been that way a while. Title fights, but even baseball, the new strike zone rules and starting an extra inning, a run at second base, you kind of adapt to the times. I mean, you might not like it when it happens, but I think we all adapt. Or should adapt.
Well, you have either adapt or you don't watch the game anymore.
And we had a lot of fun in the old debate shows, especially Billy Martin, who was
we had a lot of Billy Martin debates.
He would have been a tremendous boxer, I think. He had that attitude, and I mean, he could really throw some mean punches. I mean, we heard about that thing with Dave Boswell, a big guy. And Billy would get into all these fights, which we didn't approve of. We don't approve of things like that. It's against the law and it's morally wrong on top of it. But I love the part about Billy where I would back him being a new school principal. He would come in there. He would clean it up. The worst school in the district, he would clean it up the first year. And all the news crews would be. But by the end of the second year, graffiti on the wall. And the secretary says, "Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Martin's in a meeting," and he comes staggering in at 11 in the morning, like with a hangover. We had a lot of fun talking about those scenarios.
We did. We had a lot of fun. It was great. And of course, you and I, we both miss Mac. He's just a good man, and he was taken far, far, far too soon.
Yeah. But the network is named in his honor, and the mark that he left. I mean, one of the greatest things a person can do is leave their mark. I mean, in a positive way, of course.
Yes,
and Matt left it in an extremely positive way, and he changed a lot of lives for the better. So,
he sure did. And again, here's the graphic. So great stuff, and I'm honored and proud to be part of the Mac network.
And Linda, if she's listening, I think I said thanks to something, but she made a comment, with my book on social media that Mac would have been proud. So that's really appreciated.
And Mac was very proud of the books, especially the Roy White book. So, yeah, good, man. We had that one game, that football game. We all had a chance to get together and go to the Jets-Giants preseason game many years ago at this point. But, those are still great memories.
Neither team is still good since that time. The Jets have the longest playoff drought in history, but look, the NFL draft is tonight, so I hope I'm not giving anything away if it's being a taped show. But
no, nothing to give away. This is going to air on Saturday, and then on Monday night, and then I think on Tuesday, and then maybe on Wednesday. I have the schedule. But anyway, Jack, we're here to celebrate a big moment. This is something you and I started talking about, that you had this great idea probably 5-6 years ago. So tell us about your brand new book.
Yeah, Michael Spinks. This is an authorized biography. And the ironic part about it, Paul, I was going to do the book regardless of whether it was authorized or not. And I called up Mike Spinks' representative. And I said, I'm doing the book regardless. The only way I wouldn't have done it if they told me a book on him was about to come out that was an authorized biography, then I would have backed off. I would have given that courtesy. And they understood understood that I was going to do the book, but I said, look, it'll be much better if I have his cooperation. And they said, they'll get back to me on it. An hour later, they got back to me and put him on the phone, and it was a go, and then we met. And this book's very important to me in this sense. Think of a ball player who's played a lot of games but never been on a championship team. That was me. So many magazine articles, one after the other. It seems like I've written thousands of magazine pieces, fight reports, columns, but never had a book. So this is actually my championship finally to get this book out on Michael Spinks. Fascinating character though, but very laid back. I mean, nothing bothers him at all. Where there'd be things where we wouldn't be able to even sleep if certain of the things went on with us that went on in his life. But he's a history-making fighter in the sense that in 1985, he moved up in weight from the light heavyweight division to beat Larry Holmes to win the World Heavyweight Championship. And no other world light heavyweight champion in boxing history ever made the leap up to heavyweight and won the title. And some great ones tried. Archie Moore didn't work out. Bob Foster. Moore got knocked out by Marciano. Bob Foster got knocked out by Joe Frazier. Billy Conn did a great job against Joe Louis, was winning the fight, but ultimately got knocked out. And people thought the same thing was going to happen to Spinks, and it was a big fight for Larry Holmes. He was 48-0, and he was one win away from tying Rocky Marciano. I hate to say record. That's what everyone referred to it. To me, it was a manufactured record in the sense that other fighters have gotten to 50-0 and continued and then lost the fight, and then it's not considered a record anymore. But he was one win away, and Holmes picked Spinks because he thought he was a smaller guy. But Spinks was ahead of his time in 1985. We hear all about this modern technology today with athletes. And I'm not talking about steroids and all that. I'm talking about the natural weight training and diets and so on. And Spinks, was with Mackie Shilstone from New Orleans. He was a kind of, he described himself as an integrative specialist, but someone who specialized in nutrition and did things different, where fighters would normally, and you can relate to this, the running part, would do long, slow runs. Shilstone did away with the long, slow runs, and he'd have Spinks run hard for 3 minutes at a time, like interval training, and then eased off a minute, then another hard 3 minutes, and he'd have some distance runs mixed in, don't get me wrong. And the training methods, even with the weights, the way Spinks would lean down, have weights on his back for when Holmes was going to push down on him. And going into the fight, when we heard about all these training methods, people condemned them. Even Sugar Ray Leonard, who was on the HBO broadcast, was more or less saying this is kind of like a gimmick type thing. He kind of disregarded it. But it worked, and Spinks went from 175 to 200 pounds in the Holmes fight, upset him and made history.
Yeah, that was a unanimous decision, correct?
That was a unanimous decision in the first fight, yeah.
Then they fought again. It was a split decision.
A split decision, but let me just backtrack a little bit. Okay, with Michael Spinks, he came out of arguably, definitely one of the roughest housing projects in the United States at Prudigo in St. Louis. Really a rough place to grow up in, and a lot of young people didn't survive that. But I don't want to say boxing was his way out, but it kept him and his brother Leon Spinks really busy. And Leon Spinks' brother was an absolute wild man, not a hoodlum in any way, shape, or form. Leon Spinks was a nice person, but he was totally irresponsible. Interviewing his son, Corey Spinks, Leon's son, I interviewed him in Boca Raton. We met at a Starbucks, and Corey became the world welterweight champion, actually. So he was a heck of a fight in his own right. He said his dad would go out to get milk and not come back for 2-3 days. Now, you and I can't tolerate that type of behavior, but he would just go on his binges. I mean, he never hurt anyone, Leon, so he had a good heart, but totally irresponsible. And Michael was always responsible. That's one thing about him. And someone who did a review of my book said, if you were a parent, you wouldn't want Leon babysitting for your kids, but you'd be good with Michael babysitting.
Oh, that's nice.
Responsible. Yeah.
That's awesome. No, as I think about this, the Klitschko brothers were both heavyweight champions. Leon and Michael Spinks were both heavyweight champions. Were there any other brothers that you know of that were heavyweight champions?
No, those that's the only pair. That's the only two. And well, but I'll take it a step further. The Spinks brothers were both Olympic gold medalists. Not both, yeah. So see, when you look at what they did, and they were always very close. And the way Michael described it, he got into boxing by being a bit of a bully in his own family. I mean, even though it seems out of character, he intimidated his siblings. And even though Leon was 3 years older, Leon took the abuse from Michael until one day he snapped and he put a beating on Michael. And Michael was impressed with the beating he took. He says, wow, how did you learn to fight like that? And then Leon told him about going to the gym. And Michael begged Leon, can you take me to the gym? I'd like to learn all that. And Michael would go to the gym, and that was kind of his life. And in the Olympics, Michael is part of that famous 1976 Olympic team. And they're going to be celebrating the 50th anniversary of it this year, that Howard Cosell called the real heroes of our Olympic Games. They created a big buzz. You had Sugar Ray Leonard, who had that wonderful smile, he was just a media darling. And then you had Howard Davis, whose mother died 3 days before the Olympics began, and he didn't know whether he was going to stay behind and fight or not. And he decided to stay behind because it was his mother's wish for him to win the gold medal. And that was a big, big story. And he did win the gold medal, Howard Davis, as did Leonard. And then there were the Spinks brothers, who were slipping under the radar, but they were gaining some momentum as time was going by, because they're both from St. Louis, and their mother couldn't afford to see them box in the Olympics. But a silent donor came forward at the last moment and flew the mother to St. Louis to see them box. And Leon and the other fighters had it really difficult. Michael, he had an easy route to the Olympics. I told him that, and he agreed. He got walkovers, buys, all the bricks you can get. He wanted to fight, He was getting edgy. I want to beat someone. He only had to fight one time to get to the gold medal match. And it wasn't his fault. It was crazy circumstances. But when he got to the gold medal match, he fought a Russian Riskiev, who knocked him down and beat him decisively the year before in an international meet. And Michael got his revenge. He stopped the Russian fight in 2 rounds and won his gold medal.
It's another thing. Like, I even during the Olympics, it's hard to find the boxing matches, right? It's not they like don't even promote them like they used to. Yeah, so it's a shame.
It's a shame. I'm telling you, it's insane. I'll know the Olympic boxing matches are going on that day. I'm turning channel after channel. And it gets to the point where you feel like giving up. Then you might think, well, the Yankees are playing. The heck with this, right? I mean, like even baseball, like Yankees, Wednesday night prime video. I only get it on my iPad. I want to watch it on the darn TV.
I don't even get it. So I just say if they don't want
Prime, you don't even get it. And
it's ridiculous. I say if they won't put it on, then I won't watch it.
I mean, and then it bounces around some of these events, channel to channel. But when Michael Spinks fought, it was easier to get his matches because we had wide world of sports. He usually fought a lot of the time on his title defenses were Saturday afternoons. And Howard Cosell was a broadcaster for the majority of once he became world light heavyweight champion. On the way up, NBC with Marv Albert as the announcer, they broadcast some of his fights. But yeah.
So let's jump into some of this. He fought one of my, well, if you think about this, he fought Larry Holmes twice, beat him twice, and did Leon Spinks ever fight Larry Holmes?
He did. He did. Let me just slightly backtrack. Michael beat Eddie Mustafa Muhammad for the WBA light heavyweight championship. They made 10 defenses. One of the defenses, he unified the title against Dwight Muhammad Qawi, who was a great, great light heavyweight champion. And Qawi and Spinks had familiarity. They used to spar all the time out of Joe Frazier's gym. Okay? But right before I get to Holmes, I want to say that the funniest part about writing this book, like when you sit down with a subject, they go over stories. I'm sure with Roy White, he went over some funny stories. And maybe one stuck to you where you laugh about it. Whenever you think about it, it warms your heart. What happened at Joe Frazier's gym, Joe Frazier was extremely close with Spinks' promoter, Butch Lewis, and Joe Frazier and Michael Spinks liked one another a lot. One day, Michael Spinks goes up to Joe Frazier's office, okay? And he's needling him. He's joking around. And I guess he went too far. The next thing he knows, Joe Frazier's retired, out of shape. He's in the ring with Michael Spinks with the gloves on. And Michael's telling me he's doubling over laughing, thinking, he's old, he's, slow, he's out of shape. He could handle Joe easy. To him, it's a joke. The bell rings. And Joe Frazier comes out smoking, throwing these mean left hooks. And all of a sudden, Mike Spinks says, I realize Joe still got it. He could take my head off if he lands one of these. And he's running all over the ring just to survive. Otherwise, a washed-up Joe Frazier could do some serious damage.
Oh, that's great.
And he even loves, going over that story now.
That's great.
But when he fought Larry Holmes, what was the question? Winning the title.
Did Leon fight? Did Leon fight?
Leon did. Leon, he had abused his body a lot. He didn't take care of himself the way Michael did. But for the Larry Holmes fight, it was in Detroit where Leon relocated. Leon got in good shape, but Larry Holmes was miles ahead of Leon. He would have beaten Leon no matter what shape Leon was in at any point. And Leon got stopped in the third round. And Michael says, I don't know if this is accurate or not, that he threw the towel in himself. And it was always a thing with him. He kind of wanted to get back at Larry Holmes. He said it was never personal. He never disliked Larry Holmes, but he kind of wanted to get a little payback for what Larry did to his brother, even though it wasn't personal. That's how it is at times, with family. They kind of want a little payback. It sounds worse than it actually is, the words.
No, it sounds normal, right?
Yeah. And he got it. He beat Larry Holmes in that first fight. And the majority of people feel the decision was absolutely just. It was valid. It was a close fight. But the drama was building up. That was a 15-round fight as the fight went along. As the rounds went along and the realization was setting in that Larry Holmes could actually lose the title. And when Spinks won the title from Holmes, the focus afterwards wasn't on Michael Spinks. It was actually on Larry Holmes, what went on at the press conference. He was upset, obviously. He didn't expect to lose to Michael Spinks. But as Larry Holmes is talking to the media, he notices Rocky Marciano's brother standing all the way in the back of the room, like smiling. And Larry said a few unfortunate things that he regretted. Like, the famous line, Rocky Marciano couldn't carry my jockstrap and all. But the good thing is, eventually, he and the Marciano family, they made peace. And when a statue of Rocky was unveiled in Brockton, Massachusetts in 2012, who should be together joking around? Larry Holmes came to it, and he and Rocky's brother were joking around with one another like they were the best of friends.
Nice.
So
well, you know what?
Yeah.
I like that. I like when people make up. We listen, Jack. Everybody says things they regret. They in the moment or whatever. And the beautiful thing is there were no hard feelings, and they made it better, and they patched it up, and that's a great story.
Yeah, but the second fight was controversial. Most people think Larry Holmes deserved the decision. And a point I made to Michael Spinks very clear, this isn't going to be a fan book.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm going to take you to places that you're going to feel really, really uncomfortable with. I'll respect your privacy to a point, and I'll respect your rare requests if you don't want me to talk to a person now and then. I'm going to do my best to respect your wishes. You know how it is. You're doing a book on someone. If it's their biography, you have to respect their wishes, but to a point. To a point, they have to respect you as a writer and you having editorial control. So it's kind of like a balancing act. And I would make him feel uncomfortable at times, but he had certain requests that I not talk to a couple of people, and I left it alone.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I left that alone. But I could tell you something that happened that was kind of funny in a way. He wound up marrying the person who he's been with her since the 1980s, who's his agent, more or less. They've known one another all these years on and off, but they're very, very close. And he's in her apartment, and she's the one that arranged, you know, the finishing touches on me being his biographer. And I'm asking about the other women in his life. And she's aware of what's going on with him. He was so nervous. And I'm not asking specific names, timelines, what went on. And he is bobbing and weaving. But at the end of the time, at the end when we were done, and I was there about 3 hours, he's walking me to the door to say goodbye. And he's giving me a look like this. All of a sudden, he smiles like this. He's giving me one of these, you know the way these things are, Jack. I mean, I do, but I don't. I mean, I've been ethical the whole time myself. And I took him to a place he was kind of a little nervous about. But the Larry Holmes rematch was controversial, but Larry Holmes got off to a big lead in that fight. And I had Holmes up a couple of points at the end. But Michael Spinks scratched and clawed his way into the fight and put himself in position to get a decision. And being a sports guy, especially baseball, you got to close teams out. You got to close someone out at the end. We've seen teams winning all game, and somehow another team gets within range, where they could actually beat them. And that's what happened with Michael getting the decision over Larry in the rematch.
And that would happen sort of with the Sugar Ray fight with Hagler. Ray
Leonard deserved that decision in that fight, I feel. But a lot of people feel Hagler won. But it's interesting relationships. So for years, Larry Holmes, he would harbor bad feelings, not getting the decision in the rematch. And he and Michael weren't exactly the friendliest. And Michael was leery of him, but Holmes actually let go finally. Finally, he let go. It was a lot of years of bad feelings. He invited Michael to come to his golf tournament. Michael accepted and then got cold feet, didn't show up because he was scared of what Larry might do to him. It was insane. But then they've gotten kind of reunited in a way, and I write but there might be a little hard feelings, even though I'm told Larry doesn't have any ill feelings at all. Michael likes Larry a lot now, believe it or not, but he still thinks Larry might feel a certain way. So I said, you can invite them to dinner. They'll break bread together. Just they'll be at the same table, but just don't put them next to one another. Let one person be beside, and they'll get along great. Probably laughing and joking, and
that's good stuff. So after he beats Larry Holmes the second time, he fights a guy I never heard of, Stephen
Tank. That was a free pass.
Okay,
the guy is yeah.
And then he fights Jerry Cooney, who Jerry Cooney, right?
I know him very well, and we had him on the podcast Glove Fist, and everyone loves Jerry Cooney. He's a big teddy bear. I mean, the friendliest guy you're ever going to want to meet. But I wish he'd stop whining about losing to Spinks. Now, Jerry went off the deep end, we agree, after he lost to Larry Holmes in 1982. He was never fully dedicated again for a long period of time. He fought Mike. He had a couple of fights before fighting Michael. Then he fought Michael, and it wasn't an easy fight for Michael. but the last round, fifth round, Spinks obliterated him, dropped him twice, and hammered him bad, and they stopped the fight. And then a couple of years after that, he fought George Foreman. Jerry Cooney is okay with losing to Larry Holmes and George Foreman, but it irks him to no end the loss to Spinks because he looks at Spinks as being a little guy, a light heavyweight. And Cooney keeps saying, well, I was a kid. If I was at my best, Michael Spinks wouldn't have had a prayer against me, wouldn't have had a chance. And he goes on and on about it. And I said on Glove Fist, but okay, but if that's the case, the you that beat Kenny Norton and Ron Lyle and Jimmy Young, isn't that the same situation that then you shouldn't be given any credit if you're not going to give Michael credit.
What do you say to that?
I mean, Jerry doesn't dislike Michael. He says Michael's all right. He doesn't dislike him, but it irks him no end the way he lost to Michael Spinks. And I thought Cooney was the guy, as I read in the book, who'd least likely talk to me for the book. But he volunteered everything. And there was one of Michael's opponents, I'm sure you never heard of, David Sears, who Michael knocked out in 3 rounds and defended the light heavyweight championship against. I really appreciated David Sears talking to me and giving me his input. And you want to know why I appreciated it? Because he didn't want to talk to me. He did not want to talk to me. It wasn't me personally. He didn't want to relive his dream ending at the hands of Michael Spinks. But he talked very well of Michael Spinks. He talked very professionally, and it was appreciated. It was appreciated. Yeah.
What about a Jerry Cooney book in your future?
Let me just say David Sears. He was a protege of Burt Young, a Rocky fame, by the way.
Oh, yeah, really?
Yeah. And they had, before the fight, they had the segment of him training with Burt Young with the bricks and the whole thing. And, it was kind of cool.
That's awesome. So what about a Jerry Cooney book in your future?
No, I don't know. Cooney, I heard, came out with some type of book. Jerry likes to talk about being sober the last 37 years, having a wonderful family, wonderful friends and everything. And that's great. That's more important than anything else. But let's be honest about it. People would rather read about the sports exploits. I know I'm not going in the wrong place than read about someone just being, getting their life together. If you could combine it all in a book, that's the best of both worlds. Mm-hmm. And it's much more important to be a good person and a great sports person. We get that. That's undisputed. But they'd want to hear about Jerry's fights and this and that. But Jerry likes to talk about being much better off than the other guys. And listen, it's rough with fighters. There were certain fighters I tried to get in touch with, and I couldn't. One of them, his main rival, Dwight Muhammad Qawi, passed away, but I didn't know he had dementia at the time when he was alive. I'm calling all over the place. I'm getting this lead, that lead. Finally, when I thought I found him, and I think I did, because they said, well, we can't release his number. We can't give you any information. Then there was another well-known opponent, and I kept after him. Finally, his wife called, and she was very nice and kind and explained he had dementia, and she doesn't think he will recall this or recall that. And I didn't mention that in the book, anything about it with dementia. Right. That's their privacy and everything. But I understood. And then you have opponents who, you have like Yaki Lopez. I spoke to him last year, age 73 last year. No opponent took more punishment. Of all of Michael Spinks' opponents, Yaki Lopez, far and away, took the most punishment. The guy had the clearest mind and the clearest voice, as if he never took a punch in his life. That kind of went against the grain, like he's remembering things from 5 minutes ago, 40 years ago, whatever. And he sounded, fantastic.
Oh, nice.
But yeah. But the punches do have an effect.
No doubt.
And they happen on Michael. I'm not going to play an apologist. I don't think he has dementia in the sense that you can relate to this. When you're doing a book and you're with someone, it's different from interviewing them on a show like this, because you could push them in private if that's your style. And I pushed Michael, pushed him. Come on, Michael, you got to give me more. That's not enough. I don't want to hear one sentence. Talk to me. I was like a trainer, pushing him, pushing him. And finally, I get him to talk more. And he's a quiet guy by nature. Nothing bothers him at all. But the Cooney fight, he did a great job beating Cooney. And then I'm sure you want to get on to Iron Mike Tyson.
Well, yeah, it's interesting. I don't think anybody knows. Like people, a lot of people have heard about Michael Spinks. Obviously, he was a heavyweight champion. But he fights Mike Tyson. He goes into that fight 31-0. Tyson knocks him out in the first round. But we've talked about Larry Holmes. You talk about Joe Frazier. You talk about Muhammad Ali. You talk about George Foreman. You talk about Jerry Cooney. These guys, they keep fighting and fighting. So he probably could have kept going. How come he stopped? He lost one fight, and then that was it. Why does his career end right there?
This is insane. That's what makes Michael Spinks unique. When he was fighting, one of his goals was, I know it's crazy, I'm going to keep fighting till I lose a fight. Then I'm going to retire. I mean, most of the time it's the opposite way. They talk about retiring unbeaten or whatever. He could have been talked into coming back. Okay, but when he lost to Tyson, it was such a burden to get that fight to be made. And eventually they made the fight. And ironically, the promoter of that fight was Donald Trump, was the promoter of that fight. He was also the promoter of the Spinks-Cooney fight. So there was like that relationship, like going on. And he got paid, Spinks, $13.5 million was the purse for the fight. It had to be divvied up, however. And Tyson got $21 million, but Tyson was the much bigger attraction, And even if Tyson had lost that fight, he was so marketable, you could bring him back. But Spinks would have had to get back online again. I mean, think of it. You're going for Yankee World Series tickets, okay? And you're like on the front of the line to get tickets, and all of a sudden the line closes, and the officers and the officials tell you, no, you have to get on that line back there. And you look, and that line is stretching 6 blocks back. You might not have the patience to get online for the tickets again. Once it's just, and he just didn't want to. But he flirted gently with the idea. But I credit his promoter, Butch Lewis, for shutting down all the talk. Butch Lewis is the enigma, his promoter. And what happened with Michael Spinks? He was so dependent on Butch Lewis, so dependent. Butch held on to all his money. Butch gave him an allowance. I wouldn't recommend it for anyone. I'm sure you have some great friends in life who you cherish in an amazing way, okay? In an amazing way. You wouldn't let them hold all your finances and give you an allowance and pay your bills for you. You wouldn't. The only time you should allow that if you have a trusted spouse and you have that type of marriage, that's different. Everyone should be aware of their finances regardless, all parties. But so when Spinks got knocked out in 1988, he retired immediately, supposedly secure for life. When he was light heavyweight champion, Butch Lewis would give him $1,000 a week. When Spinks became heavyweight champion, it was $10,000 a month. Butch Lewis continued to pay his bills from 1988 to 2011. And you give him the money, pay everything, but then Butch Lewis dies in 2011. He's been sick a while, and all of a sudden, Michael Spinks becomes destitute. No bills are being paid, no this, no that. Butch didn't leave anything with the will. But I think a good part of the money would have been used up anyway. But because Butch was living an extravagant lifestyle, he was close friends with Denzel Washington, Robert Johnson, the head of BET Network, who owned the Charlotte Hornets, who sold it to Michael Jordan. And Michael became destitute. he had to borrow money for a while. But what had happened, Butch did some good things. One, he had Michael buy a home in Delaware that's a block away from Joe in Delaware when Michael was heavyweight champion, and he paid it, and they paid it all off on Michael's name. It was all paid off. So now Michael has no mortgage, and he has that chip, that home. He also set up a retirement account for Michael that Michael didn't touch in like 35 years or so. And all of a sudden, Michael remembers, wait, I have some type of retirement. They've been trying to get in touch with Michael. No one was able to because Michael's a recluse. If you leave him alone, he'll lock himself in his room and stay there. He loves going places, but you got to take him there, and then he has a great time. But he'll just stay and watch TV. And that grew in interest, that retirement account, and it meant a lot of money. So Michael today, even though he doesn't have the wealth he should have, he's still a multi-millionaire. I mean, he has a few $1 million.
Nice.
And he lives very conservatively. So the money is budgeted. He has a financial advisor, it's budgeted. He doesn't live fancy at all. He doesn't have the need for, really much besides just eating. And he's not the type of guy to go out and get a new wardrobe. So he's better off than most,
Wow, that's good to hear. Jack, how can we get the book? Where is it sold?
Everywhere? Yeah. You can get this book. Go online to Amazon website, Barnes & Noble website, the Target or the Walmart website. There's several other websites besides those for Michael Spinks. Yeah.
I'm going to get myself a copy. Jack, this was great. I loved chatting with you. I loved hanging out with you. And we've got to do this more often.
It's a lot of fun. And Yankees, are they going to the World Series in that?
I'm not a believer in Aaron Boone, so I know they've
won. You and Keith Engel. We're going to have you on our show on
Keith and I,
May 4th. If you could make May 4th that show. We're going to talk about your book right here. Let me give it a plug. The Yankees by the Numbers, and I told you about that movie. You got to watch the scene again for love of game in the bar when the guy starts reciting the Yankee numbers. It's good stuff. This book's going to help me because I've never been a big numbers person, remembering numbers, but I'm going to kind of become really attuned with all these numbers. Yeah.
Nice. You're going to be reading my book while I'm reading your book, Jack. Yeah. Thank you so much for joining me. And my dear friends who watch, thank you for watching. Jack and I have to get together again. As you talk, Jack, it brought back years of memories of hanging out with you on Saturday mornings, just like this. And of course, with Mac, it was so great. Thank you, Jack. Thank you to everybody for watching. This has been the Dr. Sem Yankee Show and the Start Spreading the News podcast. And we'll see you next week.